So I just rejected her a few times and said, no, there's no way that I can teach Sunday school, because my level of education for when it comes to religion ended at second grade, and I didn't feel confident enough. And she said, look, you don't have to do anything. Just be my aide. Be here to help me. And so finally I agreed to be an aide and to help. Safety environment had kicked in, and so you got to have 2 teachers in there. And so I said yes, and I went to help her. And a couple of months into the process, the woman became pregnant, and she had to stay at home, so that left no one to teach but me. And so I walked up to the pastor, and I was like, well, at this point in time, we'd switched pastors, so now I had Father John Labone there. And I said, Father, I am not equipped to teach. And he said simply, do you know how to read? And I said, yes. And he goes, great, read ahead. Be ahead of the kids. Just read and teach what you read. And I'm like, oh, great. He goes, and pray a lot. And so I started to teach, and I started to pray a lot and started to get ahead of the kids. But God was calling me to learn more and know more, and I felt uncomfortable. And so I asked him again. He said, fine, if you're that uncomfortable, join RCIA. And I was like, what's RCIA? It's Rite of Initiation of Catholic, Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. And I was like, okay, well, what do you do there? He goes, well, you learn the basics on your faith. And I was like, well, I'm already Catholic. He goes, yeah, but you need to learn the basics. So I said, okay. So I went and joined. And there in the midst of my joining this group, there were so many people there. They put us into small groups. And there was 2 Baptists, 2 Methodists, and 2 non-denominationals in the group. And then there was two of us, 2 Catholics, and then me. So 3 Catholics there. So the 2 Catholics were the ones that were teaching the group. And a few weeks into this process, the male counterpart was transferred out of town through his job. And so that left the woman. And the woman that was left behind is a wonderful lady who had a degree in theology. And she was very, very smart, and she knew a lot. And so I just kind of listened. But she spoke like this. She spoke with a very low voice. And it was really hard to hear and really hard to understand. And she was just nervous and didn't have the confidence. And so she asked me to teach. And I was like, are you nuts, lady? I don't know enough to teach these people about our faith. I'm here to learn, not to teach. And she said, the best thing ever. What better way for you to learn than to teach? And so she goes, look, come here on Tuesday nights. RCIA was on Thursday nights. Sunday school was on Sunday. So come on Tuesday nights, and I will show you what you need to know. I will teach you what you need to know for Thursday to teach. And so we did just that. And it was a beautiful experience. So I got up and I started sharing my faith and sharing the belief of Christ and how he has called us all. And it was just a wonderful experience. That I was invited to the Easter Vigil, and I had never been to an Easter Vigil before. And so I'm there participating and just looking at all what was going on. And it was so funny because in the midst of all of this beautifulness that was happening for the Easter Vigil during the retreat, during the rehearsal, the lady who ran RCIA decided that she had enough, and so she left. And so Father John Labone was just looking around saying, and he had a book in his hand, and he said, you, the guy who I asked if he knew how to read, and you said yes. Yep. Here, read this and do what it says. And so he left me in charge of the Easter Vigil, the portion that the priest doesn't do. And I was like, are you nuts? I've never even been to one of these things. Again, if you know how to read, just follow the instructions and you'll be fine. And it really, really was as simple as that. It was incredible how God just illuminated my heart and my mind. It was as if I had been doing this my whole entire life. But I was able to walk and journey with these individuals. And that was the beginning of a long journey. So at that point in time in my life, Jesus just said, you know what, here you go. Father Labone is phenomenal in my vocation story, in my journey with Christ. He invited me to then participate in men's prayer groups. He invited me to continue to teach RCIA years later. And still years later, I was teaching Sunday school. So in 2008, when everything was going good and I was in my prime at teaching and running programs and helping out in programs at St. Thomas Aquinas, the industry of the lending industry took a change, and that's what I did. I was a lender, and it made it really difficult that I went up to Father Labone and I said, Father, I'm going to have to step back from the positions that I'm doing here because I need to go back to work full time. Not so much for myself, but for my individuals that worked with me, because we all worked on commission, and so I needed to close loans. I needed to go out and sell loans in order to bring them into the door. And he said to me, no, you can't quit. Why don't you just keep praying? And I remember as if it was yesterday. It was 2007 when that happened. And in the midst of teaching RCIA, in the midst of Sunday school and all the Bible study courses, and yet he didn't let me quit. And I had to work full time. So I walked up to the cross at St. Thomas Aquinas, and I always had this conversation. It's a beautiful cross there. And I walked up to it and I said, God, if you want me to continue to teach and do all of this, I need you to help me in my work. Because my people, the people at work, need me to do my job. And I know you need me here. But I can't do this by myself. But with you, everything is possible. And it was as if, well, it was. It's not as if. He heard my prayer and answered my prayer. It was incredible. Because 2007 to 2008 was a phenomenal year. I had 18 boys in my second grade class. And I don't know if you ever taught second grade before, but to teach 18 boys in second grade is crazy enough as it is, right? But then you had 2 boys who had Alzheimer's, and that's a totally different challenge on its own, Alzheimer's. And it's a totally different challenge in itself. And so God taught me how to teach them differently. God taught me how to move them out of the class into a gym and teach them differently. And it was an incredible journey, incredible experience. We went from learning everything in second grade to third grade to fourth grade, and we ended at fifth grade. These kids were on fire, and it was a beautiful experience. But not just that, 176 people went through RCIA that year. I think that's the most we've ever seen. A lot of people went. And that year, I had the most loans that I've ever had. And that was a beautiful experience. That when May of 2008 came, I walked up to the cross and said, God, thank you for this beautiful experience, but I'm tired. And I need to take a break. I need to walk away from this. And I walked up to Father Labone and I said, Father, you have the whole summer to find somebody. I've got to take a break. I've got to walk away from this. And he's all like, nope, go and pray. God will illuminate your heart and your mind. And I'm like, no, quit telling me to pray. And so I went and prayed. And if you would have known me back then in 2007, 2008, I was not an early riser at all, especially on Sunday. And Sunday, I had my go-to Mass. I always went to the 11 o'clock Mass, and I always sat in the same pew. But here it is, Memorial Weekend, and God wakes me up super early to go to Mass. Oh, he wants me to go to 7:30 a.m. Mass. I'm like, wow, who does that on Memorial Weekend? And I was struggling to stay in bed, but God just kept nagging at me. So I got up and I went to church. And I got there just as a priest was walking up the aisle. And so I quickly sat in the back. I didn't sit in my normal seat, and I sat in the back. And there in the midst of sitting in the back, after communion, I'm on my knees and I'm just kneeling and praying, and Mass is dismissed. And there's about, I don't know, maybe 200 people there at the most. But I like to stay after church and pray. And so I'm sitting on my knees and I'm just looking around at all the people exiting. And there in the midst of it are people that I helped during RCIA, people that I helped at CHIRP, men and women whose children I walked through at Little Rock Scripture, or I walked through their kids through Sunday school. And it was just amazing how all of these people were just coming at me. And the one announcement that they had that day, was, have you ever thought about having a vocation? And I was like, Matt, nope. If anything, I want to be a deacon because I felt called to be married and be a father. But no, I don't want to go on another retreat because the last retreat really changed my life, and I'm afraid of what's going to happen. And so I just kind of pondered it, but it was crazy to see all these people coming at me. And on Wednesday, the retreat was going to be the following Saturday. On Wednesday, I had got the courage to call. And so I called and I talked to the vocation director. And he asked, he picks up the phone. He goes, "Hey, sure, what's your name?" And I said, "Oh, it's Martin Castaneda." He goes, "Great, Martin. How old are you?" And I said, "Well, I just completed my 41st birthday. I was just 41. He's all like, "Oh, Martin, it's so awesome that you called. But hey, you're a little bit too old. Our cutoff is 40. And I was like, "Oh, nuts." And I'm like, "All right, well, no problem." Hung up the phone. And I was like, "God, I tried. I'm done." Well, God had other plans.